All right, I think that's it. I think we are recording. Excellent. All right, so hi everyone in the module. Today is our last lecture. We've invited our guest speaker, Victoria McDonald. Yes, I got that right. And Victoria is an MA student, postgraduate, doing her MA with education, leadership and management. And part of the Real Life series is that I've invited a couple people, like you would have heard from Liliana, to talk about a bit of their research and what they've been working on to give this final nice finesse touch to the module about experiences in real life, in real research. And Victoria does some fantastic work overseas, and she's going to tell us all about how she got into education, what some of her interests with it. So we're going to run a little bit of a Q&A, and students will be invited to come onto Moodle, or even at the bottom of this video, to post some comments, and we can invite those comments back to Victoria to answer in case you're interested in getting some more information about the work she does, or how you can similarly get involved in some of this work yourself if you're so inclined. So without further ado, welcome Victoria. Thank you for doing this virtually.
Thank you.
I know it's really tough to be via correspondence and getting on with your own work and getting on with this, but we really do appreciate you taking the time to be here for the module. So I would like to start by asking you, how would you describe your role in education?
I think the beauty about being involved in education in the developing world is that you can perform a whole variety of roles. It's a very colorful, very dynamic, very adaptive process. So it's not education in the formal sector as you would see it. So my role at the moment is to act as a bridge, kind of a facilitator between first world education models and those that are being practiced in Ghana, which at the moment exemplify the 1950s colonial model. But what's happening is that the teachers and the students are champing at the bit, because they've got more access to the internet and tech hubs, to define a different education path for themselves. And ironically, the government's not able to keep up with this innovation that's happening. And so I'm working with young professionals who provide workshops on the weekend to help these students bridge what they think their education should look like and the secondary education they're receiving at the moment. Because there's some very exciting education models coming out of African universities, which are more project and activities based. And what we were finding was the learn by rote and regurgitate information system that was part of the old industrial Victorian time doesn't fit well with this new model where students have to take initiative, adapt, find their own solutions, work in a multidisciplinary way. So because of, ironically, the lack of resources in Ghana, we're finding that departments are bringing in students from the sciences, social studies, governance, to work on a project with all of these different area inputs to make a much more dynamic education. And what I'm doing is help these young professionals I feed them information and they calibrate it for the cultural context in which they're working.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So what got you interested, like a little bit of your background, what got you interested in pursuing this kind of arena? Because you could have, I'm assuming you were educated in the UK, or were you? No?
No, I was educated in apartheid South Africa. And as I got to the end of my secondary education, I had a component of young women that were going off to military regimes to change, to come back to fight the apartheid regime, because I was part of a school that was very unusual in that we did allow children of color to be there. It was quite alternate. And I realized that as I went into university and I explored African literature, English literature, and multimedia, even in the dark ages, that I started to go and teach in township schools, which were those isolated apartheid communities. And so I started off my teaching career surrounded by tanks and full military apparel. And then, of course, I went into rural development, because I think that poverty alleviation is actually a fundamental right that has to be addressed. And I worked in a whole range of countries in Southern Africa to do with creating small businesses and using natural resources and working with traditional leaders. But I came back to my true love and set up a life skills and career development project in Soweto Township, which is a huge, very impoverished township, but with young people. And they created projects. And with the first democratic election, we got the ministers to sit in the audience, and the kids presented to them what they felt they wanted the future of South Africa to be for them. So it was always in quite an exploratory, working at the coalface of where teaching is really important to deal with basic needs in a community.
That's fantastic, because I think a lot of our students would have the experience, even though being educated in different places, they would be training at Roehampton to have that experience of preparing to go into the sector. A lot of their workplace experience as well would be to be almost filling in as agents of the curriculum, agents of the school reform. So school is set in a certain kind of way. And it's very good to hear that you're coming to it where students are able to dictate, well, not really dictate, but able to project what schools should be like or what they want out of the limited resources, which is always a nice way to understand that that still happens. And I'm sure that's maybe with COVID-19 happening a lot more now than it has. So
I think with COVID-19, there's going to be much more collaboration between students and teachers because of the anxiety and the stress of people are feeling. They're only going to be able to cope with a certain amount of education output. So it's going to be more of a partnership. And I think that between the developing world and the developed world, that curve is going to be flattened. And hopefully we'll have more equitable education because it's more of a partnership rather than a hierarchy.
Yes, I agree. And tell us a little bit about your research project, what it is that you are currently investigating.
Well, what's really key in Ghana, they've got a very innovative, ambitious government. But what they haven't done is they haven't consulted the teachers and the young professionals working in this alternate education provision, what is actually needed by the students. And so I went and interviewed a whole range of practitioners, whether you were running a street children's program or you were heading up an NGO or you were a recruiter for a business, to find out what were the qualities and aspects that were missing in the present secondary education, the gaps that we needed to bridge to help students get into the workplace where they felt more confident, they were more highly skilled, or move into these high delivery universities with high scientific and economic excellence. So keeping in mind, most of the families of these children, the parents are illiterate. So where we would rely on our parents to help us through our education path along with the school, these young professionals in their early 30s have stepped in, and the teachers are de facto the parents of these children.
Right, okay. And your work is looking into providing some of those links, some of those resources.
Well, the research is quite interesting because I've brought out some key themes, and we're going to then present it back to government and say, when you reform the secondary curriculum, could you include more social and emotional learning? Because of the big gaps between where parents are and where students are moving to, parents are actually proving to be quite restrictive because they're quite traditionalist, and they use traditional medicines and other traditional ways where the kids are wanting to push beyond that and become global citizens like all young people. And so I think the curriculum needs to accommodate much more of that, and I'm hoping that my research will be taken through by these young professionals to government to show that they need to be more inclusive of the innovation that's coming from the coalface. And it's quite a critical time because when they reopen the schools after COVID-19, it's a good opportunity to start with quite a shift in the model of education.
Yes, it's a timely a timely event indeed.
So in a sense, research doesn't have to be something that is known, that remains on a dusty shelf in a library. It is a very, very vibrant piece of thinking. You have to underpin it with a lot of literature review, but and your ethics committee approvals are really difficult if you're going offshore. And in the developing context, there's actually very little research relative to the developed world. And so that's what makes it quite a bit more rigorous process. But the research can actually make quite a big contribution because there's so little out there.
I think that's really good to hear you say, because this is what the students have been learning on this particular module, that research is something that is part of our daily lives. It's not something that is just done and put out there. How do we get this information? What do we do with it? And how it eventually enriches our entire curriculum, our entire our choice system, what we do. So I found it interesting that you commented about like students, the teachers, the people who lead in these classrooms in Ghana, acting in as a bit of a support network for parents as well, who may be more traditional. So my next question leads on to what are some of the key educational differences, but I might start between Ghana and the West, but I might start with how long is a school day in Ghana? Because clearly that's a lot more to fit in. So starting with what a school day will look like, what are the hours like for students there?
Well, let's start with the fact that with this new government, they provided free secondary education for the first time in the history of the country, which meant that from the age of 12, with free education, parents were more inclined to allow their daughters to go to school. Oh. So suddenly we had a 40% annual enrollment increase. So within about 2 months, they had to find another 8,000 teachers because suddenly there was this huge burgeoning capacity in the secondary system. But the problem was that there was not enough infrastructure. So they have to run a dual track teaching system. So there's the gold and the green track. That classroom is used 365 days a year. And there's no such thing as a holiday period because the two systems run and interlap concurrently. They're trying to reduce the class sizes to between 50 and 60 students a class. And so what teachers are doing now is that they work in groups where they give students an idea that they've got to research and create some kind of consensus and then debate it with the class to justify their position. And this peer learning is actually proving to be a lot more constructive way if you do have a class of 60 and only one teacher. The other key issue is that traditionally girls missed a week of school a month because there were no bathroom facilities. And so there has to have been an adjustment to accommodate that. Many of these classrooms don't have electricity. It's 35, 36 degrees, so it's really hot. So they're constantly looking after each other to make sure that they're drinking water. But there's an incredible commitment and pride in being able to even find a place in a school. So if you work in if you're in a street children's program where you're paying the equivalent of £1 per month for your low fee paying education, you work on that in order to be able to apply for a place at a government school. So to get a place at a government school is a great accomplishment.
Oh, that's very good. So there is motivation in that as well for the people who are working to get these placements.
Well, I have to tell you, when you're living in poverty, education is your way out of poverty. Yeah. And I've worked in classrooms where children have sat there with the rims of spectacles with no glass in them because they're trying to say to me, I am intelligent and I am watching and I am learning. And they think if you wear spectacles, that makes you clever. And it signals to the teacher what you're needing. But I am absolutely blown away by the level of commitment, but both the teachers and the children have toward their education. It is really a fundamental public service.
Yeah, in one of the links that you sent me yesterday, I had a look at the video, and in the classroom setting towards the end of the video, which I will make available for the students, there was the scene where the teacher is teaching them, and then there are so many students in that classroom, and the children are on the floor, and they're sitting and they're sharing desks, and she's telling them put their finger on their mouth. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, we complain here about having 30 or 27 or 25 children in a classroom where there are full facilities, and these kids are all listening and being part of this and not being disruptive. So I can imagine, I didn't think about it as the students appreciating the opportunity to be there, but I think now I can get that.
I think that particular clip was to do with healthcare, and that particular school is actually an orphanage. So a lot of those teachers are the primary parent in that environment. But I want to explain to you, one of my favorite teachers is a woman by the name of Rita, and she's a formidable force. She's in a school of 4,000 boys, and she teaches English, poetry and literature to 4,000 boys, and it's all staggered out. She's dyslexic. And so for assessments, because there's no such thing as dyslexic or dyspraxic tools in these schools, so students are allowed to demonstrate their assessment through drawing, through enactment, etc., if they are severely dyslexic. But Rita once had a class of 112 English students.
That's a lot of students.
For a term. And she is extraordinary. She will still send a WhatsApp message to a parent to prompt them about something that she's picked up in an essay, wanting to make sure that things are okay at home. It's an astonishing profession in a context like this.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question. So for people like Rita, what motivates educators or teachers in these developing countries like Ghana to continue working despite some of the challenges and the setbacks and even the personal challenges that they may have being dyslexic? What do you think, having observed there, gives them the drive to keep moving forward?
Well, for a start, it's a job. And in fact, what's interesting, it's quite a cohesive and very warm and loving environment in Ghana. And a lot of the teachers took up that call to find another 8,000 teachers in the matter of 2 months. So 50% of Ghanaian teachers are not qualified. But as soon as they start to teach, the children guide them and lead them along the way as to what they need until government can come in and provide some support, professional development. But it is a much loved vocation. It is a much respected vocation. It is a salary, which is not common in these contexts.
Yeah. So here in the UK, we have lots of teaching professionals who leave the career in the first 5 years. So it may start off with similar motivations. Here, when I poll students in my sessions, especially the students that are looking at this video, they often go into it for the altruistic version of getting into teaching, the giving back to community and whatnot. And some of them are honest enough to say, yes, the salary, the days off, it starts off like that. But I can imagine some of the people who are working in Ghana have been doing it for quite some time. And maybe not just maintaining as a job, but there could be a bit of a passion towards knowing what you're doing and security in what you do. So they don't seem to jump. Do they fall off the radar? Do people talk to you about looking for improving their own development further than where they are? Or is it more of I'm happy that I have this and I'm staying here?
It's amazing. Every teacher I came across in a formal job is training another group of teachers in the informal sector. Right. So they've all got little training studios at the bottom of their properties where they're teaching other teachers or running a street children's program. What I would like to suggest to your students is that amazing teaching experience they get in the first few years doesn't stop them from going to take a management and leadership role in education, because as much as we've got teachers on the front line, it's managing the delivery of education that is so critical. And I sat in a series of workshops last week with educators from all around the world, but they're managing a whole range of levels of delivery under COVID-19 lockdown around the world. And so management and leadership in education is quite a nice path to move into once you've got some experience of what a teacher has, the challenges that he or she has in a classroom, because you can then go and use that experience in another format in the education profession.
That is interesting to note. Yeah. And yesterday as well, when we were having our pre-catch-up, I think it was yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it? Yes. Okay. Developing countries, you mentioned recently participating in a conference or seminar, symposium. So in light of COVID-19 happening right now, we find that the world has to suspend to this distance learning. And you were mentioning some of the differences that you spotted between developing countries having to cope with this online system in comparison to developed countries as well, that are now getting back into this. Universities are like, oh, what do we do? How do we take all of our learning online? Do you want to make some comments about some of those differences that are happening?
Well, unfortunately, in the developing context, there isn't really access to a technical device. You can't necessarily afford to buy data to go online somewhere. So the mantra is no tech or low tech, which means that they'll probably use television, morning television broadcasts. Radio stations are very, very proactive. It's a very warm medium in order to be able to put information through. However, there are a few NGOs that are using this opportunity to use distance learning. So they have a studio where there's a teacher or two teachers on a particular subject on camera, and they beam that into a remote classroom with 20 or 30 teachers, and they do training, distance training. And the teachers can also communicate with their peers, keeping in mind some of these teachers have had to cross a river or get long distances to a training center like this. But I think with COVID-19, what's going to come out is that students, wherever you are, will always be able to get data online in some tech hub somewhere. But it's the social and emotional learning that is going to be built up as far more critical to our curricula, and that is going to have to be in both the developed world and the developing world, because of the anxieties and stresses that both children and teachers are feeling in this very disruptive period of our lives at the moment.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is true. Learning to learn in isolation and learn with technology being the only thing speaking back to you is going to be challenging. This is reminding me as well, because Australia is a very interesting country where, rural parts like in the West and in the outback region, where students are very isolated, and they come together. They have to travel very far and come together. And because we don't have broadband throughout the whole country, you'd find that you'd have to take a helicopter, or teachers would have to be flown in, and that kind of remote learning style would be set up for them. And then on the eastern side, in Sydney, Melbourne, Victorian suburbs, you've got this very modern, developed version of smart boards and tablets and all of that. So you find that there is a little bit of a crossover happening even in one particular country. So I think the challenges between them are interesting to manage in terms of how funding goes. But I know that there are also some NGOs that are trying to use tablets as well in some, I think it was in some refugee camps, to help.
And also in the favelas in Brazil, they use solar-powered tablets where the curriculum is already downloaded. And this is the way China's going, where you have a national platform and the AI inside the curriculum moves in accordance with the interests and direction that the student chooses. So if a student's in a refugee camp or in a war zone, at least they have a tablet with the curriculum. However, I think what came out of this conference is that we are human beings that need connection, that schooling is actually a community place in which people can find human connection. And we've got to find our humanity back again, away from this hyper testing and hyper assessment and hyper accountability, which has taken the joy and the love out of education for not only students, but for teachers too. And I'm hoping this COVID-19 is going to soften the education provision. But there was one thing I learned from these 142 countries last week, is that education is a fundamental fulcrum of a society, because it gives us our purpose, and everybody should equitably have access to it.
Yes. And I think, the COVID-19, I'm hoping too, for the students all watching this video, it takes away a little bit of that prescriptiveness. You tell me and I do, some of that performativity where you are competing rather than, learning in companionship. So I feel like we are all here learning from each other and with each other rather than against each other, which former systems and testing systems have put pressures on us to comply with. And I'm going to come to my last question. So I've got a group of my students who are all very interested in education, but don't all necessarily want to be teachers. So how can a person who's interested in the UK, who's interested in helping developing countries or getting in touch with Rita and these other people that you may know, how are ways for them to become more involved? Do you have any recommendations for them?
I do. The United Kingdom is amazing with the whole array of non-governmental organizations that are out there. And they all serve various purposes. Some are clean water, some is food parcels, some is ensuring that girls remain in education, some is anti-female genital mutilation, or a whole range of issues. And so my suggestion is, because it is a really sensitized system, you will find the place where you feel comfortable. My first meeting in Ghana was with the Minister of Education. I don't like working at that level. I much prefer to go and work with young professionals and young people. They're much more exciting for me. And my idea would be to go and find a job in an NGO working at the front desk, in reception, in administration, so that the whole range of the projects in that organization cross your desk. And it's very important that you find the path that reverberates with you, because there are some areas, it's like the video that I think you're going to be showing in George there, the headmaster, called me on a Monday and he said, I've got a list of names of children who are about to be trafficked, and we need to get them logged on an international register. So what's amazing about NGO work is it's very unpredictable, but you've got to be very careful about where you feel safe working. And there's some areas that I feel like emotionally I can't go and work in, and some where I feel more comfortable because it's more positive for me. And my suggestion is go into an NGO and sit on the front line in an administrative job. Go and get an internship in the summer. Get a non-paying position even for 3 months. And very quickly you will get a sense of if that's an area or which aspect of that area of work you'd like to work in. I mean, I'm watching the NHS now with COVID-19, and I'm seeing the people who are distributing garments or specific mechanisms that make the system work on the front line. And that's what you've got to do in the developed world. Go to work in the most basic of jobs in these institutions, and very quickly you will find an affinity with an area that you want to pursue.
I think that is a wonderful, positive message to show that every little bit that you can do will help. And we do need to think creatively about how we want to become more involved. And I think you're absolutely right. I got a message from the neighborhood community that people are sewing gowns for the NHS. So it's every little bit, just can I do it? What can I do? What do I feel comfortable doing? I think that's a really positive note for the students and a good answer for them.
And also one last thing, with the United Nations workers that were part of our seminar last week, some of them, and like my niece, she works in Kabul in Afghanistan with the refugee agency, with women who've escaped the Taliban. And you really need to have a real connection to that work in order to be able to endure the challenges of it. But there is absolutely no job that is more satisfying. And this is not necessarily about the money, when you have a whole group of empowered people who come out the other end and they pass the baton on to the next lot who are going to add value. And I think that is the most satisfying part of the process.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, fantastic. Well, Victoria, I want to thank you on behalf of, well, thank you for doing this, but also thank you on behalf of all of our wonderful students who are going to enjoy this video and maybe have some comments. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And we will be in touch again if there are some questions.
I'm welcome any questions. I'm really happy to give whatever I understand the answer to be.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Bye.